how you're getting 100% close rate and like what goes into that?
I don't get a ton of consultations because people tend to wait to hop on the phone with me until they know they want to work with me.
What does your Instagram content look like?
The way I do Instagram is usually I will think about the coaches that I'm already working with. I will pick a theme that's coming up in all the sessions. I'll grab one idea that I just shared in a group coaching, and I'll just get on and do that live or turn it into a reel.
Make the results visible, make the hidden experience visible by doing. Welcome back to another episode of The Art of Online Business. And if you can see me, then you can see us because I'm here with Caryn. And she helps coaches make their businesses as great as their coaching. And in a moment, you're going to get to hear some really good advice and strategies because she shocked me. Like, Caryn, when you told me that you don't get any consults that don't say yes, I'm like, that's 100% closing rate on a discovery call, strategy call, whatever you want to call that call to get a client. And I'm like, okay, I want to ask some more questions. And you told me it was because, you're going to share on this episode how to make hidden experiences and results visible. That way you don't have to sell. That way your messaging and content is attracting the right people to you. And I'm like, this obviously, because you're a coach, applies to coaches because you coach coaches and work with coaches. But I also think it applies to somebody who has an online course or membership, but does, say, one-on-one strategy calls at a rate. So I'm excited to talk about that. Before we talk about that, though, if my voice or face is new to you, listener, hi, I'm QUÄY.jo. I'm the new host of The Art of Online Business. And if you're like, where the heck did Rick go? Head down to the descriptions. There's 2 links there. One's to an episode where you can find out where Rick went. Another is to an episode where he interviews me, and you can find out why the heck I'm the host of The Art of Online Business right now. And if you're coming to this episode from the before we hit record segment where Caryn and I just got to know each other, cool. Good to see you again. And if you haven't heard that episode, it's a pretty cool episode. It was my desire, my heart when I started this segment before we hit record, just to be able to actually meet other online business owners. Because I'm here down in Mexico singing that song to myself, lonely, I am so lonely, right? Or maybe it was the hip hop version. But really, I'm like, I'm behind 3 monitors, and that's all I see. And I see my team on Zoom call, and I get glimpses of like these super cool people because I'm having guests on the podcast and doing the meet people and partner up and collab thing. But then I don't really get to know them. And I'm like, I miss, like, Caryn, for real, I missed, like, you worked in restaurants like me too. I missed the job and I will admit that I was not 100% productive at any day job for the whole time, right?
Right. Who is?
Who is? Okay, great. Glad that you're in that camp too and you're willing to be transparent. So, what I missed a lot ever since this whole pandemic thing and working from home was that all of the exchanges are transactional. There is no BS. And actually, all of the conversations that are worthless or amount to nothing actually amount to a whole lot. They amount to relationships, you know?
Yeah, being known.
Yeah, I miss that from having a regular job with people, you know? With regular people, actually, because
Real humans.
real humans, right? Are you a real human? Do you have a family?
Yeah. I didn't just land here.
Really, though, it's like real humans. At any rate, I was recording an episode 2 episodes ago with a really cool lady, and I can't remember her name, but she said something that struck me, which was that she feels like it's taboo to talk about your family on a podcast, and she had thanked me for asking me about hers. And I was like, yeah, you know, in lots of podcast episodes, we don't talk about our families, we don't talk about our beliefs, we don't talk about kids, we don't even talk about like what we really like to do. It's just business, 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 or coaching, coaching, coaching. And it's like, how are we relating? And so that kind of all went into starting the before we hit record session.
I like it.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me and for having all of me, not just the business nugget that you wanted to come in and get for your podcast. Like, I think that is worth a lot.
I believe so too. So we had this good before we hit record session. And then before we hit record for this second session, we started talking about cool stuff too. So we're going to get to this strategy that makes the invisible visible as far as coaching goes and the success that when made visible can get your content and messaging selling for you. And I don't know if I can aspire to 100%.
I don't know if you want to either, but we'll get there.
All right, interesting. But before we get to that, we were talking about traveling, and then that led to weddings. And you were going to say something about your wedding. And did you say it was a Norwegian wedding?
I had Norwegian themes to my wedding. I grew up in Alaska's Little Norway. That's what it's called. And some of my relatives from Norway came over for the wedding.
Whoa. All right.
Yeah. So, and I did live in Ballard, which has a strong Norwegian component to it as well. And fishing. I grew up in a fishing village. So, yeah, I got married on a boat that I had worked on all through college to pay for my undergraduate degree. And it was a blast.
You got married on a fishing boat.
Yeah, not like a yacht. We're talking about a 76-foot, built in 1940s in Tacoma. The name of the boat is the Tacoma. And I worked on there for 4 summers. And so that boat and 2 other boats that were similar in age, old wooden boats, all 3 of us went out to the Sound and rafted up. And I had my husband fly in on a float plane with his brothers. I surprised him and set up a tour where they went and flew over the glacier and then landed and had this massive entrance. Later on, people told me, it's really the bride who's supposed to have the great entrance. And I was like, you're right. All I did was sit in the forecastle, or I was up in the pilot house on my way out.
So, but I mean, you set it up the way you wanted it to be. And so apparently you wanted him to have the cool entrance.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to have that entrance. I'd already taken that tour, but they had a good time.
Wow. Okay, so how many people were in attendance on the boat?
There were 135 of us on the 3 boats. So split between 3 big back decks.
What? How? So you got married on a boat and both parties were split between the other 2 boats and your boat?
Yeah. So fishing boats aren't like yachts or whatever that have these huge cabins. They have the cabins up front and then big open back decks. So we just had the big open back decks lined up with all these chairs, and everybody fit and could see and all that stuff.
Oh, so like side to side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're in the middle getting married.
Yeah, I was in the middle.
Okay. All right. Cool. I guess that means if one family gets out of line, you can just kind of wink at the captain and he starts driving them away or boating them away.
Yeah.
I've honestly never heard of a wedding anywhere remotely as unique as that.
Yeah, I hadn't really either. And, it's a rainforest up there too. And it was this amazing week of weather. Everyone was sunburned. People still talk about it. This was 15 years ago. They still talk about the weather and how many of the church ladies were praying for the weather to be good that day and how it all came together. It was pretty magical.
Wow. I mean, in that is, I would say, such a blessed experience in that area of the world to be out in the water and to have sun, people getting sunburnt. Wow. Okay. What month was this? You said 15 years.
June. Yeah, it'll be 15 years in June.
Hey, it'll be 15 years for us in May 23rd.
Awesome. Soon. Happy anniversary.
Well, happy early anniversary to you too, right? So we were on the same wavelength. Fishing boat. See, what's going to happen is we're just going to keep connecting like we were in the previous episode, and the listeners
You're can we talk about business now, please?
So why don't we just make a hard segue into the meat of the episode, or at least the part that I teased at the beginning of the episode, though I do want to know, how could you ever survive on a fishing boat working? That sounds so difficult and hard.
I mean, I think there are hard parts to it. I think one of the things as a female on a fishing boat is a lot of people having higher expectations of you than of dudes. The benefit, if you're a woman on a boat, you have to be better than the men on the boat at things. Or people they're already expecting you to not pull your weight, so they, it's
Oh.
Yeah. So, and you have to cook. If you're the girl, you have to also, so you do everything and you cook.
Oh, wow. All right. We'll get back to the episode in a moment. Do you need Facebook ads help? But maybe Facebook ad management is not right for your business at the moment, which is fine, but you would like my eyeballs on your ad campaign. I have a new offer. The people who've signed up for it so far are loving it. It's called Facebook Ad Setup to Success. In the next 30 days, you can work with me over 30 days. We will together set up your ad campaigns and get them running successfully the right way, the exact way that I do for my clients. That means you get 3 calls with me over the period of 30 days. And in between each of those calls, you get unlimited access to me, like Voxer, Slack. That means I'll show you how to set up the ad campaign, all the things you should consider. We'll also go in and look at your funnel, and I'll make recommendations to improve your funnel. And then in between each call, you get coaching from me still, because you can record your screen, send me a message, say, hey, QUÄY.jo, what about this? Like, what would you do here in this ad, you know? And I'll respond to you that very same day. It's unlimited support from me and 3 calls from me. It's called Facebook Ad Setup to Success. And if you want my help, one-on-one coaching to run your ads, then click on the link in the description below, or go to, you can see it on the bottom of the screen, theartofonlinebusiness.com/call. Theartofonlinebusiness.com/call. And I'm happy to help you successfully learn to run your own Facebook ads.
But I lucked out. I was on a really nice family boat, and probably half of Southeast Alaska still thinks that the captain is my dad, even though he was not.
Huh. Okay.
He did marry us out on his boat, so he's a very important person in my life still.
Whoa. Was this crabbing? Was it fishing? Was it?
This was salmon tendering for seine fishery, and I've done Dungeness crabbing, black cod, halibut, and then I went up to Bristol Bay, which is way further north in Alaska, and did gill netting for sockeye.
Dang. So I've only seen boating like on TV, though I did have one friend. His name was Dustin Zoda. He's still alive, so it is Dustin Zoda. And he would go up to Alaska on the summers, and he would tell me what I think are horror stories. But what kind? You're gonna have to tell me what kind of boating he was doing. But he had to put on like a wetsuit and the thing over his head, and he was on the seafloor with a tube. I think was a term called dredging.
Or he was doing, it was either sea cucumbers or something else.
It was basically a vacuum, he said. Whatever he was catching, he was vacuuming effectively up off the floor. So like they weren't super far out, but he was underwater in a suit and a tank in pitch black, basically, walking around. And he said these huge eels would like come by and bump him. Can you talk like more concretely about what I'm kind of doing the third party seeing on? Like, what are these things called? He said they were really big, and since you couldn't see, it was kind of scary because they would like brush up against you. Like, what is he talking about?
I've heard of the sea lions coming and like messing with divers, but the eels, I don't know about the eels.
Maybe it was sea lion. I think it was eels, is what he was saying.
That sounds really freaky.
It sounds like something I would never want to do. Whatever animal was bumping into him while he's like, I wouldn't want to be there with nothing. Like my mind would play tricks on me, and I don't know. You see the movies, and well, you know how they work. Black people usually die first when it comes to these horror movies or something. So don't want to go out underwater. Coaching. We're gonna talk about coaching. So can we start with how you're getting 100% close rate? And, like, what goes into that?
Well, one thing I'm not doing is I'm not generating a bunch of cold leads, right? So if I don't generate a bunch of cold leads, I don't have a bunch of people showing up on the phone who don't know what I do or how I do it or what it's like. So that in itself, I think, illuminates a lot. I don't get a ton of consultations because people tend to wait to hop on the phone with me until they know they want to work with me.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly what that's about, if it's my energy or whatever. I think a lot of times people hire us for our energy. Like you notice, I'm pretty calm. A lot of people hire me to bring that calm in. But I think one of the things that I do, and I'm always trying to figure out, is because we work in these invisible arts, is how do I bring what actually happens behind closed doors confidentially and bring it out onto the front stage so that people can see it and feel it and understand it versus me trying to write good enough copy to talk about a transformational experience.
So how do you do that?
I, on my podcast, I bring people on and I coach them. So like one of the ways people can feel out what it's like to work with me is I'll be like, hey, do you want to just come on my podcast and I'll coach you on that? And it's free and you get like a 30-minute coaching session and you can say what you do with your business and get that little bit of publicity if you want it. And you can have the free coaching. And sometimes those people become my clients.
That seems like such a no-brainer. Like when I had asked you and you like responded about what we could talk about, how do we make the hidden experience and results visible? My mind just made up this complex thing that you probably were going to share, about, I don't know, taking and transcribing a session and chat GPTing it to get the right messaging and put it, and you're just like, I just have free consulting or coaching sessions on the podcast.
And I have a freebie that's 30 days of powerful questions. Coaching is questions, right? So one day I got on Voxer and I just did a flow and I asked all these questions, thought about like my ideal client, and I created this whole flow. Turned out to be 30. And so I put that, so audio or written, people can go in their email one day, like every day they get one question to answer. And at the end, you're going to know a lot more than at the start. And so they're getting to experience what is it like to have somebody ask me big questions? And more importantly, what is it like for me to be held accountable to answer them?
Okay.
So that's another example. The other one is like post a powerful question, a little image on Instagram or whatever. People can answer it.
Oh, like in stories.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to get this freebie. That's not the one that you said you wanted to share.
No, I'll share. Yeah, I have the other freebie is just a lot about the 5 ways to do this. And I give examples and like the therapist, Nedra Tawwab, she's really good at this. Like she's always talking about these therapeutic modalities and things she does with clients, but she's bringing it to the people in her Instagram stories and her reels all the time.
So there's the answer to our question. Make the results visible, make the hidden experience visible by doing a free session.
Yeah. Because here's the other thing. If you're a coach or you're a consultant and you're in this, we deliver these one-on-one, whatever kind of services. So much of online marketing is directed at people who are selling information. I'm not selling information. I'm selling transformation. So I need to make sure that like my marketing gets at transformation. I can't go put out a listicle. I can't go put out like, I'm going to teach. And then you show up on a phone call with me and all I do is ask you questions. That's going to be like a bait and switch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's intriguing the simple way you describe this. I couldn't figure it out on my own back when I was deciding who to focus on working with as a Facebook ad manager. Though what happened is I never was the best at getting results for a coach. And then I figured it out later. It's that when the language of ads, an ad copy tends to be like a concrete result, or it's like, what's the core problem? And then like, what are frustrations of that problem? How does the solution that like we sell serve the people who have that problem? And I realized, oh, that's why like I can't quite do as good of a job for coaches. At least there's great ads managers that can work with coaches. I never was able to get that great of results. And so when you said that, I was like, how do you take what can be a transformational process for people with a myriad of different needs and sell that?
Yeah. It's awkward.
That's the challenge that like I had, and you figured it out. So another question that I'm curious about, because this would help anybody listening. You can do it in coaching. What does your Instagram content look like then? You're not reposting 30-minute podcast sessions to Instagram, but like in a world where like most listeners, they know you want to be able to get your messaging dialed in on Instagram to attract the right kind of person. Like how do you do the Instagram thing? Coaching coaches.
The way I do Instagram is usually I will think about the coaches that I'm already working with. I will pick a theme that's coming up in all the sessions. I'll grab one idea that I just shared in a group coaching and I'll just get on and do that live or turn it into a reel. So I'm taking what seems relevant right now and just sharing it. So if you were my client, a lot of the things I'm saying on my reels are what I would be saying to you.
If they were your client, a lot of the things that you say on the reels is what you would say. So
I just treat everyone as my client, basically. Like, you get on my podcast, I'm like, hi, I'm your host and your coach. Like, you're here, I'm coaching you now. You're in my inbox, you're getting my newsletters. I'm sending questions. I'm sending like ways for you to have greater awareness of yourself. You follow me on social media, I'm going to talk to you like you're my client.
okay. All right. That it is so clear and so simple, the strategy.
I guess it is when I say it like that.
Well, it really is. I feel like we could make Instagram or make a podcast, or let's call it just sales and marketing so complicated. But I want to take part of this element and maybe because for my podcast I was doing something called funnel fixing. I was doing it more maybe several months ago, where on an episode I would dive into the top of somebody's funnel or maybe to the middle point, and just kind of dissect it and give my insights and my thoughts. But then I never thought, oh, I could do this with somebody live. So, huh. I wonder what that would it could be fun. Now I'm thinking, can I give somebody like a consultation on their ads live?
You can totally do it.
Oh, okay. Wow. That was confident and a quick response.
Well, think about it. Like, if you do that and you have all these people listening, they're going to, because you're getting so specific into one person, they're going to be able to find themselves in the story. It's like, have you ever read a memoir where you didn't, in some way or another, fall in love with the person?
I have never read a memoir. You caught me off guard with that one.
You got to read a memoir because it's so weird. It can be any memoir of any person. Well, as long as they're like a decent writer, you read it and you're like, you just have this sense of love for them because it's a human life. It's a human, like their struggle, their, whatever was going on for them. I think it's the same thing. Like when I coach one person and you get to watch it, you can't help but translate it and like get into it. So if you do it with a funnel, I'm imagining it's the same thing.
Huh. I'm gonna have to take the leap and not attempt, just do it. Find somebody who I could, because I do so many consultations with people's Facebook ads where we just hop into Ad Manager and it's like, for me, it's easy. For them, it's worth paying for it, you know? And so to share that on the podcast, all right, okay. I've learned. I'm here as the host, and you're the guest. I'm learning the most. So cool. Okay. All right.
Well, and I think you said the magic word of like, it's for me to hop into Ads Manager, it's so easy. And that's for me to hop in and just coach. Like I can just coach anybody, anywhere, anytime in my pajamas on the side of a mountain. I don't care. I'm like, I'm in. I'm going to do it. It's easy. So how do we make what feels that easy for us be the front stage thing?
I like it.
Yeah.
I do want to ask, after I ask you about travel, I do want to ask, like, what does your discovery call, what do you call them, first of all?
Consultation calls.
Consultation call.
Sometimes I don't call them anything. I just go back and forth in the DMs and I say like, if you want to hop on a call and talk about this and share more, let me know. So I just called a call.
It would be cool to talk about that in a moment. Just what that process of being on a call looks like. Because again, for me, coaching can have a different result depending on the need. Like a good result looks different, right? And so I'm just curious, like how do you do those calls? But before we get there, now that we've talked about that, we both have traveling in common. And you have traveled, what countries have you traveled to?
I think I started with Mexico and Canada, and then Brazil, Norway, Australia, Thailand, New Zealand, Laos, Argentina.
This was like we were single traveling, or you and your husband traveled together?
My husband and I traveled together to a bunch of places. We also went to Ireland, but I also in college I went to New Zealand and to Brazil when I was younger, and Cuba before it was legal.
What? Huh?
I had a travel agent in Mexico when I worked in the Sea of Cortez for the winter, and my travel agent figured out how to get a few of us to Cuba, Anna.
Yeah, that's intriguing. What did you do with your passport?
You had your passport and you took like a little piece of paper and put it in, and you handed it over to customs and they stamped your piece of paper. You kept that with you on your trip, but when you left, they just took it back.
Oh, okay. So, like, what Israel does standard so that, like, people can still travel to Muslim countries. That makes sense.
Yeah, it was scary though. I just remember looking at that guy and being like, "What happens if this doesn't work?" Like, I'm like, how old was I? 22, 23, standing in this country that I'm not supposed to be in. But it worked and it was great.
Gotcha. I feel like we experience life during the same time range. We'll leave it at that. That way we don't have to reveal our ages. But, that sounds like you were traveling at the beginnings of the internet when you couldn't just go and pull up pretty quickly, like 6 blogs and find all the, like, proven travel paths and get all the information from YouTube videos, like, this is how it's gonna be like, it's almost like back then, I feel like it was a specialer travel time because there was just more unknown, and you had to kinda trek through more fear.
And you didn't have a laptop in your backpack. Like, good luck. It was sort of like, here's a lonely planet. I hope you meet some nice people. Otherwise, your trip's going to suck.
You're right, I remember taking one of those to Paris. But yeah, you had to trek through a lot more fear. You had to overcome a lot more fear to do the kind of traveling you did, so wow, let alone go to Cuba illegally. No, I mean, I'm sure you went legally, just, yeah, from a different country, different port of departure.
Yep.
Cool. So, what does your discovery call look like as far as, like, the process from starting the call to realizing or, I guess, yeah, realizing somebody's the right person to work with? Because when I said, "Wow, I want 100% close rate," you basically were like, "Do you? You might not." So, yeah, how does your call look like?
Well, I think it starts before the call. So just giving you that piece would be leaving out the pre-call stuff that I do, which helps the wrong people never make it to my Zoom.
Helps the wrong people never make it to your Zoom, okay.
Yeah. So generally people will reach out in some way or another. Sometimes they end up on my calendar and I'm like, I wonder where they came from. And that's fun too. But a lot of times we connect in some way and they indicate that they're interested in working with me. And I have a few questions that I ask by email to get a back and forth going. I do this for a couple of reasons. If they can't answer the first email, then they're probably not going to have a lot of success as a client. So if I never hear back from them, I'm like, great, then that was the end for you. Perfect. And I also ask questions that a lot of my clients haven't really thought about. Like, I like to ask a bigger question, like, what does it look like 6 months from now if you've had this impact that you want to have? Like, what does that look like financially? What does that look like in a lot of different ways? And sometimes it takes people 3 weeks to come back to that one, which I find fun.
But when they do, they're ready.
Right. And they write a lot. So I get a lot of information from them too about what they're doing, what they're up to, what they really want. So then once they've shared, like, it's a couple back and forth, I've got this huge chunk of information usually. And I get that sense of like, I think I can help you. And so I say, like, I tell them, I think I can help you. If you're interested in getting on a call and sharing more, and I'll share more about what I'm up to, we can book a call. But it's this process of really them saying yes to reaching out, yes to answering their question, yes to answering another question, yes to answering another question, and then choosing the call themselves, which I think really helps weed out a lot of people.
You are describing a self-selecting funnel.
Okay, I have a self-selecting funnel.
Well, I made that term up, the self-selecting part, but based in the funnel, you're doing the same thing, and people can kinda self-select themselves out the funnel, or they can choose to engage and eventually have a call with you in a very low pressure way, and since you're asking questions, it sounds to me like they're still getting value as they kinda make or go, like, further steps down the funnel towards a call.
And it's my goal behind all of these things that I do, whether we get on the call and you say yes to working with me or not, or we go through a couple of these emails, that you're going to leave with more clarity about what you're up to in business, no matter what. Like, I'm cool if you leave the call and you say no from like a really great informed place. That's actually one of my favorite things. Or I get to send you to the right person for you to work with if for some reason you got to me and it wasn't a great fit. It's also fun when you become a client of mine too, but there's a lot of ways for these calls to be successful.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, we all in the online business space would love to work with more of the people that we love to work with more. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, cool. I like it. All right. So, you had talked about something that somebody could get from the description of this episode, and it was called The 5 Ways to Make Coaching Your Marketing. You wanna share a little bit more about that? I mean, it'll be linked up in the description of this episode.
I think the important thing about that for me, for anyone who picks it up, is that it's not a whole bunch of extra stuff you have to do. It's a few tweaks to what you're already doing that will make it feel easier for you. So it's about creating more ease and getting more of what makes you great at your coaching or whatever it is you do behind the scenes and getting that out in front of people so they can really see what is great about working with you. And you, like, what I found is it's just easier to create content if I can do it about the thing I'm most passionate about and the thing I'm the best at.